It's Laura Eubanks of Design for Serenity with your succulent tip of the day. And this is part 2 of the Bonita flanking installation that we started yesterday. Yesterday's installation is complete. Remember, we talked about microclimates and how this side is shadier than this side. This side gets more sun. So the problem that I faced over a period of 4 years was the plants on this side grew at a faster rate than the plants on that side. So eventually it just kind of became hodgepodgey and in a hot mess. So to solve that, this time I'm going to be mirroring the plants and the design that I did on that side, but I'm using slightly smaller specimens, and I'm distressing root balls a little more aggressively in the hopes of slowing down the growth so that this side has a chance to catch up. Experience is everything, and as you get to work with these plants more and more, you're going to learn more and more about them and how they respond in your own gardens. This Crassula Ovata, Shrek fingers, is tough as nails. So I have no worries about distressing this root ball significantly. And again, I'm doing this to slow the growth and also because I want it to sink lower in the hole. I want it to be a little more diminutive to mirror what I've done over on the other side. I also know that this plant, this cotyledon, is going to grow a little faster than the Crassula. So I have planted it in such a way that this Crassula is not going to get overwhelmed by this plant. They will coexist beautifully in this proximity to each other. Next, we have our barrel cactus. This was actually growing over in on the other side, and I dug it up because it is slightly smaller than the one that is over on the other shady side now. Now with barrels, again, here in San Diego, and I don't know about where you live, but roots are pretty optional, so I don't need to worry about this. I'm just going to trim that off. That's a mess. I want to leave enough root that I can handle the plant because it's very sharp. See, I'm using my clippers to kind of clean off all of the dirt and detritus. This is also a really great way to get rid of weeds that tend to grow up at the base of your barrel cactus. This is just a good grooming practice. Okay, this guy is going to go right here in front of the rock. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, well, that barrel cactus has the potential to get 15 times that size. One, I probably won't live long enough to see it do it. And two, at any point that we want, we can move it anywhere we want. Easy peasy. Okay, ready? I overshot on that just a little bit, but that's okay. I want this plant to be slightly above grade too, so I got a little aggressive there with the digging of my hole. Okay. All right, remember to always tip your barrel cactus forward too so you can see that pretty face. And then I'm just gently going to backfill around it. Next up is the Euphorbia Lactia. This one, slightly smaller than the one I planted over there. I'm choosing to plant this now because this is one of my statement plants. And remember, that's my method, is to do my mounding, stage my boulders, and then put in my foundations first. So as you're going through your design, be thinking about your ebbs and flows and your elevations. Don't get to the end and have a yard of soil off in a corner to deal with. Think about, creating some height in certain areas and some low places and valleys in other areas. Be thinking forward. I like to use my multi-tool, as I call it. It's not a multi-tool, it's clippers. Oh, and also, those of you that have been asking, I have some of my favorite things. I partnered with Amazon, and in the description of this video, you can click the link and you can purchase this kneeling pad, which I love. It's the best one I've ever used. The clippers, Scabard, other products that are some of my favorites that you might find useful as well. Okay, so digging the hole here. This Euphorbia Lactia is a little bit of a diva. It will rot if it gets really wet and stays really wet. So this is one that I'm going to plant slightly above grade and then just bring the rock up to meet that when I get to that point. I don't want it to get crown rot, so I'm going to leave a little bit of the crown exposed and we'll just backfill with the rock. This Echeveria Crimson Tide is another one that can be a tad sensitive. So it is going to get tucked here, up here, right next to the Ruchia. This Ruchia was here. It is so leathery and tough and well weathered that I decided not to take it out and to just leave it and plant around it. It's doing so well, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So this is another thing that you can do, a strategy. This is not something that I typically do because I plant so on the fly, but I am doing this time because I do want to kind of matchy these. They're not going to be exactly the same because the boulders are different. They are slightly different proportionally, the beds. You know, there's no two plants that are identical. So I'm looking more for balance than I am for absolute matching mirror perfection. So I wouldn't have to keep arching my back around and looking to see what I had planted. I went ahead and staged plants in their pots. So this is absolutely acceptable in your design process. If you're not sure, if you really are a person that needs to step back and look, you can go ahead and pop your cans in first and step back, take a look, see if you like it, move things around until you feel like you have it right. That's absolutely a fine idea. Also, as I go, this is a very small bed, and you know me, I like there to be flow and there to be hills and valleys. So I'm coming up against now extra dirt because I'm having to dig out holes and I'm adding new plants. So I'm putting my extra dirt in my planting cans, and I will use this dirt to do some pots later on. Some of these plants are cuttings. There was so much of this. This is Aloe nobilis, and it grows so rapidly. It also will turn quite red when stressed, so it's fun to work with it as a cutting. I did leave a couple of starter roots just to kind of give it a boost, but this is an example of where if your succulent stands up, you've done your job. So I feel good about this. I feel good that my planting is complete. This bed is on subterranean drip irrigation. It'll get watered once a week for 3 to 4 minutes. The soil is very well draining. I have added a lot of porous potting soil to this, so I'm confident that it's not going to sit in any water. And remember, this is a tapestry. This is a style of design. Some people prefer to see the plants spread out further. They like statement gardens. They want to see individual plants. That's not this, which doesn't mean that this is wrong. And the nature of these plants, of succulents, is they love a little good root competition. So unlike some perennials that can become very indignant and offended if planted too close together, succulents actually thrive and knit together beautifully over time. Next, I want you to really take in another lesson, and that is, oh, you know what? I kind of like it with the dirt showing versus rocking. Now, in my opinion, this is a two-dimensional design, and the rock brings in the third dimension and takes it from a 5 to a 10. But that also is subjective. You do you. When you step away from your work, does your heart sing? Because if it does, you're done and you've done it right. So Landscaper Problems 101, this La Paz 3/8, they pulled it for me out of a super bag and put it in smaller bags, and it came to me absolutely filthy. Probably due to the rain that we got. I have to wash this rock before I can put it down because it's so fine. If I try to hit it with a hose after, it's going to go all over the place. But that's okay. Problem, solution. Okay, so because I'm putting that 3/8 inch rock right down on top of the dirt, I want to make sure that I tamp it down well to you know, keep this rock from sinking into the existing soil, just give it a little tamp. This is such a small bed that there's absolutely no need to put in weed barrier fabric. This isn't an issue in this little bed anyway. This hasn't had any grass in it or weeds in it for years and years and donkey years. Okay, so once I feel like I've got it fairly well tamped down, you know, here's the challenge with you guys doing rock. If you're inexperienced, be prepared to pick it up. Be prepared to put some down and go, ugh, and pick it up. That's how I learned. It was literally a process. I figured this out for myself, this whole concept of ribboning and mixing rocks. I wasn't influenced by anybody else or by any other designer. I started just doing straight one-dimensional rock top dressings, mostly burgundy lava 3/4 inch. And then I became very quickly disenchanted with that look, so I started experimenting with adding more things, and that's how this whole process of layering the rock kind of happened for me. But there was plenty of picking stuff up in the early days. Okay, so my first layer is going to be this 3/8 La Paz, and based on what I can see back there, I'm just going to copy what I did. And you're going to want to go, you know, don't be cheap with this. You're going to want to go pretty thick because, you know, life happens, wind happens, lawn blowers, leaf blowers happen. So I'm going to go about 3 inches thick with this rock. And, you know, as I was spreading the black rock yesterday, you know, one of the challenges is visual continuity when you're doing rock. And I didn't want to just put a strip of it right here. The point of this black was to give me kind of a strong statement against the start of all of this beauty behind me. But I didn't want this to look contrived. So from that corner, I ran the black up through the middle. See that? All the way through. Now that's subtle, and maybe at first glance you won't notice it, but like with any art installation, people are going to stand and study it. So it's really important when you're doing your installations to look at them from all angles. Look at them from each side. Get on top of it and look down, and you'll be amazed at what opens up creatively for you when you take the time to do those things. Remember, lift those skirts. Do you want to know what the most satisfying thing in the world is to do? Put down Creva. And for the pièce de résistance, we have our little tchotchkes. The only thing left now is to have Greg come over when this is all dry, because remember I wet this rock. We're gonna wet look this stuff so that the Creva stays in place and that little La Paz rock stays looking real shiny. I'm not gonna wet look the lava rock because it gets kind of a weird discoloration when you wet look it, so don't wet look your lava, but any of your fine sand, Creva, you know, glass, anything with smooth edges, boulders, those can and frankly should be wet looked. This has been Laura Eubanks of Design for Serenity with your succulent tip of the day.